Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a great day. So I decided to do this in two parts today because it's been really late getting these episodes out when somebody is opting out. And I guess better late than never, right? But anyway, so I will do the second part later. Angela was on direct this morning, and by the end of the day, she was on cross-examination. Big E said some good stuff came out. So while I'm at it, big thank you to Big E, the docket chasing paper 89 on Twitter, and Jamie at just_TREBER on Twitter. They have both loaded me up with notes today. So I've been going through those the last couple of hours. Seems like it was a good day of testimony. And I think the fireworks definitely got started on cross. So big thank you to Lori, Lisa, Victoria, Becca, JM, and 10 for your donations. I really appreciate it. Really quick music fact, and we're going to jump into it. What was the first song that was played on the moon? Ironically, it was Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra. There we go. All right. So it's really funny because Jamie emailed me and said at the start of the break, she actually was downstairs and ran into Angela Wagner being taken wherever they take people like her during breaks. And Jamie was told to stay right there. Don't move. And Angela shuffled by, clinking her little chains together as she went. And Jamie called it the walk of shame. Very appropriate. All right, let's get into this first half of the day. And they just picked back up from yesterday. Angela said she doesn't recall if she monitored Facebook the night of the murders, which is interesting because yesterday she sent the text, took her sleepy pills, went night-night, and woke up the next day. So now she doesn't know if she was trolling Facebook. When asked if she thought they would get away with it, she said no. Even if they hadn't gotten arrested, you never really get away with it. She said that Billy was the one who bought the materials for that goose house, and he told Jake how he wanted that to be built. She doesn't remember how long it took to build it, but she said it was a while. And she knew it was for a Father's Day gift for Billy's dad. When it was finished, they loaded it up on a trailer and took it to the Flying W Farms. Angela was there with George, Jake, and Billy, and the kids, obviously, when they took it and installed it. Frederica and Billy's sister were not there when that was being installed. She said she did not know the contents of the concrete buckets with the cut-up weapons. She said after it was installed, the kids would sometimes go play around the lake area or the pond when they would visit Flying W Farms. And the goose house was still floating when they got arrested. Remember, when they retrieved it, it had sunk and it was kind of in bad shape. She said that BCI talked to Jake first, and she remembers she was nervous and worried when he went, and he went by himself. Billy told her about the conversation he had with BCI, if you remember, in the car at Kroger. I'll never forget that. Let me tell you something, okay? Sorry, y'all. He reminds me of Mr. Garrison on South Park. I was watching South Park the other night. I was like, that is so Billy, okay? She said that she had a conversation with Billy that Jake wasn't acting like himself. He wasn't focused. George wasn't sleeping and said he was having some nightmares. And she told Billy maybe they should not have involved Jake and George in the murders. But first of all, none of y'all should have been involved. But I mean, goes without saying, you shouldn't involve your sons in mass murder. It's these people, y'all. So Prosecutor Canepa asks about the tattoos that Jake, George, and Billy got after the murders. And she said she didn't know if they all went together to get the tattoos. She did not like the tattoo George got of the skull with the 8-ball in its mouth. And when asked if George knew she didn't like it, she said that George knew she didn't like skulls. But if you remember, there was a whole text exchange about the tattoos with Angela. She talks about their scouting trip and their move to Alaska, which, by the way, I'm going to throw these pictures back up there. I know we have a lot of new listeners that maybe hasn't seen these yet. I blurred the kids' faces out. These were in the Daily Mail, and they did an article on the Wagners when they were living in Alaska. And so I think it's just interesting to see these photos, because the one thing that I've been thinking about after today's testimony and going through these notes is you really have to wonder what was really going through their minds. Because we know Jake, when he testified, he acted like it didn't really bother him that these searches were going on and anything about the heat being turned up a bit. But with Angela, we do hear from her today that she was scared and nervous once it really became apparent BCI was kind of laser focusing on their family. And I think what's crazy to think about is we're talking about 2017 and there's still a year or more before they would eventually be arrested. I mean, it's a marathon and not a sprint for sure. And, we're seeing that now because ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got two people who have pled guilty. You've got them testifying against the one currently on trial and putting him in the middle of all of it, except the actual shootings themselves. And then Billy next year, who knows what'll happen? Whether if George is found guilty, he'll just go ahead and plead guilty and save the family the trauma of reliving this again, or, also the taxpayers a lot of money and just put them all away, and then they become some, name you hear once in a while. All right. So they took about 4 days to drive there, and they were there around 10 to 12 days for that initial scouting trip when they went. They all drove up in one car, and she said they'd always planned to move there years prior after they visited and loved it. While they were up there, her half-brother Chris kept them updated on the search warrants that were being executed on the property. Because remember, the initial search warrant that was really quiet and the media did not pick up on was on May 10th of 2017. And then the big one was on the 12th of 2017. That had all the agencies there. Everybody caught on that something was going down. Angela said she saw pictures on the news and remember seeing SWAT there and also agents using metal detectors around the farm. She said she was nervous, worried, and upset about it. And she knew things were hidden and she was worried things would be found. But Billy told her, "Don't worry, I got all the shell casings." She said she was also upset because BCI waited until they were gone. And she said they got things screwed up and destroyed. They got into the stop at the Montana border. And remember how rushed it was for BCI? Originally, they were in North Dakota, and then they found out at the very last minute they were coming in through a different entry point. So they had to get like the Air Force or, Air National Guard or somebody to fly them all to Montana. They had to get all the new warrants. Sounds like absolute chaos. But she said they were interviewed for a really long time. And they had discussed an alibi that they would all have for the night of the murders, which was that they had a family movie night and Billy had a sleepover. But at the Montana border, when being questioned, Jake forgot the name of the movie. Angela said she couldn't remember it today on the stand either. And she said that George made fun of Jake for forgetting the name of the movie they had all agreed on. In their alibi, always said, "Make it the Boondock Saints." He won't forget that. She said BCI surprised them in Montana. She was also surprised that they brought up the purchase of those shoes from Walmart. She didn't know they still had the receipt in their stuff. And she admits that she told them she threw them away because Jake and George said they were old men's shoes. Now, at some point down the line, apparently she said Frederica offered to give her a reason for buying those shoes, saying that she had bought them for Billy's dad. She said while they were being questioned in Montana, the kids were supposed to be in the hallway coloring as they were being questioned. And when she was done, Billy was standing outside waiting, but Jake and George weren't out there yet. And she said she was an emotional wreck. She was crying, upset, and worried that if Jake and George got arrested, they would take the kids away. Billy told her to calm down and also told her don't talk about anything inside the car because he was correct in assuming the car was bugged. George and Vine were the next to be released after being questioned, and then Jake and Suds. Billy had told all of them not to talk in the truck, but Angela said it was really hard for her not to because she was worried about her shoe story that she had told BCI. She said the reason that they took Vine to the ER is, according to her, he was acting disoriented. As we know, they found nothing in his system. She said they drove straight back to Ohio. They didn't stop sleep anywhere. You think about being in Alaska and knowing these search warrants are happening, you have, even though you're guilty and we know they're guilty now, but you have to feel weird, or they had to feel a little bit out of, the one thing about the Wagners, I think, is from the day they started planning these murders is they felt very in control of every aspect of this. But finally, the heat's turning up. It's been a year. And finally, they're starting to get this framework put together that eventually becomes the big picture we know now. And I'm sure whether you did it, we know they did, but it had to be really stressful to be up there knowing that the walls are starting to close in a little bit. I was just really surprised that Jake didn't admit that he was worried or scared. He just acted like he was angry. So Prosecutor Canepa asked Angela if, when they got back and she started going through things, if they noticed anything of theirs was missing from the search warrants. And she said dishes, clothing, and toys. She did not look for those custody documents, ironically. Once back in Ohio, they stayed at a hotel in Jackson. Jake, George, Vine, and Suds. Billy actually went back to stay at the Flying W Farms. So they started to pack their trailers to make that permanent move. And she said they stayed in that hotel for about a week and then they left. She said ultimately they all four made the decision to move. Billy really didn't want to go because his dad was super sick. And Frederica was begging Angela not to take Billy to Alaska and offered her, I'm pretty sure in the notes it said $1,000 a month. I can't be 100% sure. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it. By the way, I'm wrong every episode about some stupid little detail. And if you stick around long enough, you'll learn that and y'all tell me. So I appreciate it. Keep telling me when I mess up, because I usually try to go in and correct it or take it out if it's too bad. There was some talk of Billy splitting his time between Alaska and Ohio, but ultimately Suds and Vine didn't want Billy to leave. Angela's mom, Rita, also wanted them to stay in Ohio. So Angela talks about her dad being sick as well when they're in Alaska. And witnesses inside the courtroom said this was really the first time they've seen emotion out of her since she took the stand yesterday morning. And she said she would not have gone to Alaska if she knew just how bad her dad's health was at the time. Jake and George did not have guaranteed jobs at that point, and they took the trucks and trailer and decided to cross the border into Washington State. If you remember, the boys drove separate this time. They didn't all take one car. They knew people in Alaska before moving there, including the pastor of the church where eventually Jake and Beth would meet. He had come from Minford, Ohio. I hope I said that right. She says she tried to go every week, the same as Jake. Billy never went, and George sometimes went. She said Billy chose the property in Alaska and Angela chose the sleeping arrangements. Jake and George had a bedroom to themselves. Billy slept in the basement, and the notes, I believe it said Angela said she slept on a mattress. I assume the kids slept with, we know Vine slept with Angela, but they didn't specify where the kids slept. Jake and George got jobs as diesel mechanics together, and Billy worked for a tow truck guy. She, of course, stayed home and played mommy to the kids. Now, she said that she was devastated when DeWine announced for anyone who had dealt with the Wagners to come forward. So I found the original release from that, and it was issued on June 19th, 2017. And it says Ohio Attorney General Matt DeWine and Pike County Sheriff Charles Reeder today asked for help from the public in the ongoing investigation into the execution-style killings of 8 members of the Roden family in Pike County. Investigators in the murder investigation are asking for information regarding the following persons: George Billy Wagner III, 46, Angela Wagner, 46, George Wagner IV, 25, Edward Jake Wagner, 24. Investigators are interested in receiving information regarding any interactions, conversations, dealings, or transactions that the public may have had with these individuals, which could be personal, business, or otherwise. Specifically, information could include, but is not limited to, information regarding vehicles, firearms, and ammunition. The persons listed are formerly residents of Peterson Road in Peebles, Ohio, and are currently believed to be residing in Alaska. Those who have information are asked to call the BCI tip line or the Pike County Sheriff's Office. Any information provided will remain confidential, and a $10,000 reward is still in effect. So that really started to freak Angela out, because at this point, not only do they know the search warrants, but they've put their name out there with faces, ages, tells they're living in Alaska, and specifically vehicles, firearms, ammunition. So I understand that really got her nervous. By the way, this is one thing that I wanted to put up. This is a picture of all the victims. Do you know who murdered us on April 22nd, 2016? And it's got a picture of everybody. It's got a reward of $10,000 with the BCI numbers there. I remember seeing a very weathered one taken on a telephone pole before the arrests. And, it was one of those things that it got quiet for so long that you kind of move on and you don't forget about the case, but you don't think about it often. And I remember seeing kind of an update on no arrests, and I think it was actually right in front of one of the properties. And I remember thinking, wow, just 8 people executed and they got nothing. What's up? Once the news of the release hit Alaska, the pastor of the church posted this to the church's Facebook page. It says, "Good evening, church. This is Pastor Kelly. I just wanted you all to know that I'm aware of the current situation involving the Wagner family. The lead investigator in Southern Ohio does not have any evidence that the Wagners are guilty in this case." And he's talking about the investigator. He says he has my phone number and I have his. I talked with the Wagner family today and they have assured me that this is just an accusation. So we will just leave it at that. Please pray God's will be done. So Angela said after George's dad passed away, he was super stressed and started to drink a lot. He became unstable, really withdrawn, and she worried he would end up and hurt himself. So I didn't know this, but apparently George dated somebody named Josie in Alaska. She had a little boy of her own, and there was talk of her living with them, although when that was mentioned, there was an objection, I believe. Then we get to Beth Ann, Jake's Alaska wife, his only wife. She wasn't sure how long they dated, but she remembers her coming to visit them at the house there in Alaska, and then she learned Jake wanted to get married. So this is around the time we know that they're thinking about moving back to the lower 48. That decision was made by all 4 of them. She said her and Jake loved Alaska, but ultimately they decided they needed to move back. So they start talking about that farm in Missouri where they were all interested in and she found that before they left Alaska. She doesn't remember why they picked Missouri. I can't remember if it was Jake or Beth who said they wanted to have a farm, but also be where it snowed because Vine and Suds love the snow. She talked about the loan for the farm, and she said she always had bad credit. So they left for Missouri, as we know, the day after Jake and Beth's wedding. She doesn't remember anything happening at the hotel with Beth, and we all know the loan fell through, and they moved back to her dad's old house. Angela said she wasn't really in favor of Beth, but originally didn't tell Jake or George what she felt. She said Suds picked the color pink for her room and Vine chose blue. She said after they moved back, BCI once again turned that heat up on them. They started showing some evidence they had to her family. They showed her half-brother Chris the photo of Jake holding that 1911. They searched her dad's house, and they had the subpoena for that handwriting sample and also the foot impressions. Angela and Billy talked to Rita about the signature on that custody document. Angela said the conversation happened in their laundry room. Billy turned on the dryer, and Rita offered to go along with the story that she was the one who signed and notarized those custody documents. Angela said she was worried if BCI showed a surviving member of the Roden family these documents, that would give them a reason to come and kill them. She said Frederica initially gave the money for Rita's lawyer after she was arrested for her, I don't want to say forgery. She lied for Angela, really. And then recalled her and her mom giving the handwriting samples to BCI. The prosecutor asks about a conversation she had with Rita. I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about. I'm going to get Biggie or Jamie to clarify. Angela didn't remember this conversation. When the prosecutor gave her a transcript of that, she still didn't remember. She talks about Jake, George, and Billy giving their foot impressions, and she was worried what was happening while they were there. And George said he was going to smudge his footprint. Billy told him not to worry about it. So they show the photo of Jake's hand holding that 1911 on the screen. She said she never remembered seeing that gun and at first didn't recognize the hand as Jake's, but eventually realized the thumb was his. She said Beth instantly knew it was Jake's hand, and Angela felt Beth should be backing Jake up. Back to Beth, Angela said Beth was pressuring Suds to call her mommy, and she told Beth to give it time and to go easy. She said Beth didn't like the pictures they had of Hannah Mae on the walls. I can't imagine why you would want to see the face of the mother of your child, the mother of your grandchild, the mother of your niece that you murdered every day. You walk past it. She doesn't remember Beth stealing from her. Angela was the one that found Beth's journals, by the way. How about that? Remember we talked about the journals and there was a blue glove holding that journal? Check this out. Angela was worried BCI would see her burning her journals in the front yard, and Angela got paranoid, thinking maybe she's writing about us in there. So Angela finds that one journal entry that's pretty scathing about her and took a photo. Now get this. It was Angela in that. It was her hand that was gloved in that photo they showed on screen during the trial when Beth was testifying. She put gloves on to hold that up. I thought it was something they found in a search warrant, to be honest. She said that they discussed the issue, and Beth said she didn't mean what she wrote and agreed to burn that journal. Because I was thinking, if it was burned, how do we have a photo of it? Well, now it makes sense. Paranoid Angela didn't want her fingerprints on it, so she put a glove on. She said she never talked to Jake and Beth about their sex life. Beth said she did. Billy and someone, either his brother or an uncle, saw that there were cameras mounted on poles. And then they talk about the accusation that Suds allegedly made against Beth to Rita. That allegation was made to Rita, from what I understand. Jake confronts Beth about it, and Angela said she was there when he did. When asked what Jake said about what he would do to someone if they hurt Suds, she said Jake told Beth he would beat them if it was true. According to Beth, it was a lot more detailed. He was going to recreate the Walking Dead bat and string her up in the barn, beat her, bulldoze it, and burn it. So Angela said Suds later took that accusation back. And when she asked Suds about it, Suds said, no, I just don't like her. I want her to leave. So Jake was upset and tried to talk to Suds. Angela said it was an upsetting and traumatic time. Angela said George didn't like Beth either, but she said she didn't tell Jake that she wanted Beth gone. So regarding the truck they bought for the murder, she never saw it again on Peterson Road. As we know, Billy took it before sunup to his niece. However, she did see it again at Flying W Farms when Billy's niece was there taking photos of horses in 2018. She said Billy scrubbed the brake pedal and the gas pedal to clean it, and Frederica watched as he did that. Angela said as police closed in on them, George offered to take the blame for all the murders. Angela said, number one, nobody would believe you. Number two, you can't do that. Angela testified that when it was announced the shoe print evidence had been found at one of the crime scenes, George said it was his. It's a little confusing because I don't understand how he would know where the footprint was that they're referring to. At that point, I don't think anybody would have known how many they found or where. But George told Angela that was his. That was a pretty big revelation because we've always heard the shoe print evidence is kind of the big ace up the sleeve they have against, it's not even really up sleeve, but I mean, the shoe print expert said he couldn't scientifically say it was George who wore the shoes, but you have Angela saying that he told her indeed it was his. So kind of moving on after the murders and they've all been arrested, Angela testified when it was announced that shoe print when it was announced that Jake had confessed, she actually saw it on TV in a news alert. And she said it felt like her heart was ripped out. In other words, they're busted, like seriously for good busted now. So we left off at the end of the day. She is on cross. Nash is up. The defense attorney Nash is up cross-examining. Eric said he's doing a fantastic job. Apparently, they had Angela read a letter that she had written to Frederica last year from jail. And so I'm curious to get the notes on that and see what it's about. Big E said he didn't get a lot of it because it was just kind of intriguing, and he said he couldn't write that fast. So we'll try to piece it together as much as we can between Jamie and Big E's notes. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, last night I was going on YouTube to watch something as I'm just kind of chilling and about to go to sleep. And I noticed like my videos popped up in my recommended because I have a personal YouTube account that like I have YouTube Premium on, and then I have Pretty Lies. And I noticed like my face is really red. And I'm like, what the heck? So I click on it and it looked like I'd been totally sunburned. So here's the story about that. I got a new webcam and I did not know this webcam comes with these pre-filters on it. And apparently I don't watch the videos when I'm done. I just go to sleep because I'm tired. But apparently there is a sun-kissed filter that has been on for a week or more. So I don't have high blood pressure. I'm not sunburned. It was that filter. And hopefully I'm not as red today because I turned it off. All right, guys. So that's part one. I have gotten some alerts on my phone that I've gotten some notes from the second part. So I'm going to start diving into that now. Hopefully it won't be as late tonight getting the second part out and it won't be as long. But I wanted to do this for those of you who are early birds like I want to be. And that way, at least we get part of it in and we are good to go. All right, guys, we'll see you later tonight for part two. Have a good rest of your early evening.